So I've got my own range of colours. You might have come across that one, possibly. But what we've got is watercolours that I've designed. These aren't new paints. They've been around for 15 years. Called Matthew Palmer's Natural Collection. And the idea is that these are designed for replicating nature. So it's tube watercolour, made in the UK. It's supported by the SAA. I think you probably know that. If you know who the SAA are, then of course you probably know who I am, because I've been working with the SAA for about 15 years now, if not longer, to be honest. But yeah, so I've got my own range of colours, and I'll talk about each one, but all of them, pretty much all of them, can be replicated with primaries. So don't worry. For example, natural grey, which is the most used of all the colours. You get the focus, there you go. So natural grey is basically a colour of shadows. It's a shadow colour, but it's not Payne's grey. It's not Payne's grey, it's not lamp black, it's not neutral tint. Very, very unique. It's very much its own colour. I like to show people this at the start because, you know, it's important to show. And here we can see the two different greys. The one on the right hand side is Payne's grey, and this one is natural grey. It's a cold grey, but it just falls back. It's a beautiful colour. It's got recession to it, so it works an absolute treat. So well worth checking that one out, folks. Okay, natural grey. So I've popped it in the palette. We're going to be using some of that. We have some Prussian blue. I've got some Prussian blue. We've popped that just there. So I've got, that's the standard off the shelf one, of course, Prussian blue. So we've got Prussian blue. Perfect. We've also got some natural blue, which is my own blue. It's very similar to cobalt blue, but it is non-granulating. It's a non-granulating blue. Okay, so just any blue would be fine, of course. I've got a bright yellow here. This particular one is natural yellow light. If you've not got that colour, just any bright yellow, I mean cad yellow would be fine, or aureolin, something like that. You can't go wrong really, to be honest. And then we've got an orange. Now obviously we all know we can mix an orange, but here we've got natural orange, which is very similar to burnt sienna and cad yellow, if you was to pop those together. And then we've also got here quite a unique one, actually. It's part of the skin tone range. There's two skin tones in the range. This one is skin tone dark, but again, you can mix a bit of a peach colour from primaries, which is kind of what it is. I've got some goulash, as I like to call it as well. Bit of goulash. I've got some white paint here, some gouache or some opaque white. This particular one is called natural white, so I'm going to use that. It's just spot on really for what I want. Natural white works a treat. I'll use that later if I need it. Brushes wise, I have my standard 3 brushes here, which are these 3. So we've got round brushes. This one's a size 20 round, this one's a 10 round, this one's a 6 round. So it's just nice quality, and these are sable blends, very similar to your Spectra Golds, if you ever come across those. So that's the brushes, pretty much. I've got some other brushes which are my own design of brushes, which I'll kind of talk about as we kind of go through, but just to briefly mention, I've got these 2, which actually are known as the penguins. Actually, you can probably see they look a little bit like a penguin, to be fair, but these are actually called branch and detail brushes, like a reservoir brush, so a really useful tool for detail. And I've got a square or a flat brush, 1/2 an inch. It's a very stiff bristle with a tapered point called a lift out brush. Okay, so I've got those as well, and that's pretty much it really. I've got some masking fluid, I've got some candle wax. We'll talk about the candle wax in a second, but that's the materials. Let's get stuck into this. It's about bloody time, come on. Let's get to the picture. You can see it's all sketched in. Again, don't forget folks, any questions, drop them in the chat. Come on. Right, first thing I want to do is I want to drop in some candle wax, actually, because the feathers on penguins are so fine. And I've got a very old piece of candle here, which I've had for years actually, and I've kind of flattened off one side of it. You can probably just about make that out there. So I've kind of flattened off an edge, made sure it's clean, and literally I want to pop this flat to the paper, make sure I've got the clean bit. I'm going to pop some down over the wing here. This will give us some lovely texture. We don't want a huge amount, to be fair. Just a little bit goes a long way. It does help to give texture to the penguins. Like I say, not interested in putting a huge amount on here. A little bit will go quite a long way. So we've got the cub there as well, or the chick, whatever you want to call it. I don't know the official name of it actually. But that's going to give me a little bit of texture. And like I say, folks, a little bit does go a long way. I've also used the, as a way to show you, I've used it on this peacock. Can you see the texture on the feathers there? On the neck, that is wax, candle wax as well, so that's been used. Just a clear candle is all it is. Nothing too exciting about that one, to be fair, just very, very straightforward. And like I say, folks, all this is being recorded, so you can just watch it back as much as you need to any time. If you want to have a go, if you like the picture, then you know it's yours to enjoy. Let's say it's yours to enjoy. So I'm just going to pop some masking fluid on as well. A little bit of masking fluid on this one. So I've got a coloured fluid. I've got a Batiol brush here. I'm just going to use this masking fluid. This is the blue stuff that the SAA sells, which is quite nice. It smells good. They used to make a pink one. They used to make a pink masking fluid, which was great because you could see where you stuck it, which is important. But the problem with this is that people got it mixed up with Gaviscon, so I think they took it off sale for that reason. It raised funds for breast cancer, that one, so it was a good one. But a bit of masking fluid, folks. Very little on this one. Tiny bit of fluid. Let's get close in for you so you can see what we're doing. We're not going to put a huge amount on. We're going to work along the top of the head, the neck. Bring that in. I just want to protect a couple of areas, that's all, just a couple of areas. And then I also want to come down the breast here as well, just to keep it nice and crisp and clean against that background. Often use a little bit of masking tape on with this as well, but I'm just going to be using this, that's all, keeping it simple. I'm also down at the bottom here as well, just going to protect a little bit of the wing there, bring that in. Just that little tiny piece of masking fluid. I've just got an old brush here, like a 6 brush or something. Magic. And then the same for this one as well. Just going to work it along. Now the paper I'm using is a cotton paper. It's manufactured by Clairefontaine. It's actually my own blend of paper, so it's a paper that I've designed quite a few years ago. I got the chance to go to Clairefontaine and design my own paper, which was a really, as you can imagine, a nice experience. But it was basically, it was a cotton paper. It's a cotton paper. It's just called Matthew Palmer watercolour paper, but it is a nice quality cotton paper. That's the masking fluid. That's all I'm interested in putting in, just that little bit, just to protect those areas. Nothing too fancy about that. And very, very simply, while that's drying off, I'm just going to prep a few colours. Now I don't mind using the same water. So it's a knot surface. It's a knot surface watercolour paper. It's £140. That's expensive. £140, 300 gram, and yeah, it's just a good paper. It's pre-stretched as well. It's pre-stretched, which makes it quite nice to work on. I'll leave that to dry. I'm just going to prep a couple of colours in the palette there then. So we have. This is what's really cool about doing this virtual demos, because you get to see everything close up, don't you? How many times have you been sat at? I'm not saying your art groups like this, but how many times have I been to art groups over the years and nobody can see anything? This is great. It's a brave new world, folks, and I think for a lot of people this has become normal. Has it become normal for you, this, doing demos and things? So every single weekend I do a live broadcast. I do a live virtual workshop. I've put information down in the description if anyone's interested, and these are the paintings that we've been doing. Actually, just quickly want to show you that. That's a collection of what we've done over the past year. So we've done penguins, we've done robins, you know, fireworks, owls, northern lights, Stonehenge. It's a great buzz. People from literally all corners of the world book on these virtual workshops. It's a great thing, it really is. Wonderful. Okay, so I want to use a bit of salt as well. This is by a famous fast food company that's got a W on it. I don't know what that is. Is it Wimpy? Wimpy's. Wimpy's Tulse. I'm going to use some of that just to get a bit of snow in the sky. Prussian blue. I want to use a bit of Prussian blue because that works nice with salt. Some colours don't work, but Prussian blue does. And then I'm also going to bring in some of this dark skin tone. I mentioned this. It's an opaque colour, is this. Now, if you've not got this, I'd be mixing an orange and dropping a bit of blue in it, and that would work for that. But I'm going to use those two colours for the background. Prussian blue and dark skin tone. Again, all these colours are my colours, folks. You can check them out online if you're interested. If not, you know, primary colours, just whatever, anything goes, you know. I've also got some blue, bit of blue. Can't beat a bit of blue on an evening. 10 to 8 on a Tuesday. So that's natural blue, which is my own blue. It's like ultramarine. Prussian blue, which is a bit, obviously a little bit crisper. And then we've got some of this skin. That's my background. That's all I'm interested in for that. Just going to jump back up to the picture here then. Just going to give it a very quick dry. I've got one of these kind of dry. It looks dodgy, this, don't it? But it does actually take 3 batteries. It's got 2 settings on it, but we'll just give it a bit of a dry. It's a bit quieter than hairdryer. It's a craft gun. It gets quite hot, to be fair, but it's just a way of just making sure the fluid's dry. There we go. That'll do. And then yeah, let's chuck some paint on this thing then, shall we? Come on. Time is money. So what we'll do is we'll basically just going to wet the paper. Now I want to paint this in a bit of a vignette. I like vignettes. You saw some examples of my vignettes as we were sort of walking around. I do like vignettes. So one lady, the same lady I teach who calls gouache goulash, also calls vignettes vinaigrettes for some reason. But I'm going to work this in right down, wetting the whole thing. I'm really not worried how much water is going on this thing here. It's cotton paper. I'm confident that it's going to hold quite a lot of water here. Bring it down. You kind of get to know the paper, don't you, that you're working on. So, and that's exactly the same for what I'm doing here as well. So it's cotton, so it's absorbing the paint straight away. Back here again, get the water on. Beautiful. There we go. Make sure it's all covered around this area, basically. And then we're going to go straight in. So as far as the colour's concerned, the first thing is to get some of the skin tone in. It's a very rusty, almost terracotta style colour. Quite a fan of this. Just going to work it in. Just going to twist it in. I'll get close in for the detail, folks, as well, because that's another great thing about doing virtual teaching. A course gives us a chance to get nice and close in so we can see where we're actually working, can't we? Which is nice. I've been doing virtual teaching for years because I've got a website called Watercolour TV, which has its own video on demand. It's been there for 12 years and I've been doing live streaming for about 7 years. So when all this kicked off, this is the natural blue I'm using here. When all this kicked off last year, all this COVID business, I was kind of geared up for this, which was quite handy. There we go. Prussian blue then. Prussian blue. I'm just twisting the colours on, if I'm honest. Prussian blue's a nice one to bring it. It's a lot crisper, you know. Phthalo blue would be nice as well. I'm quite a fan of phthalo blue. Bring these colours in. Twisting it in. Creating a background. Lovely when it mixes with the skin tone, which is that rusty colour. Getting right into those areas. Getting right down here as well. There's a little bit down at the bottom there, not much, a touch down there. It'll all help. It'll grow on us. It'll get there. Anticipation's half the fun, I always say. Bring it in. You can smell the fear, can't you? Bring it in. Or is it excitement? Probably my aftershave you can smell, to be fair. Because of lockdown and the shops being closed, I'm down to my last bottle of aftershave. It's Brute. Brute, eh? Can everybody remember Brute? It's Brute mixed with Old Spice. I thought, you know, why not waste, mix them together. It's called Old Brute, actually. It smells quite... Have a smell. It smells a bit... yeah. Smells like Christmas 1984. It does. Okay, now what I want to do, folks, with this here, once I've brought in that little bit of Prussian, I'm just going to drop this thing down a touch. Make sure there's plenty of paint around here. I'm happy with that. So I'm going to drop this thing down quite a way. I'll move the camera to suit because I'm going to chuck a bit of salt on here. Can't go wrong, can you, really? So I'll just get the camera down there for you as well. There it is. Leaning in with a bit of McDonald's. Sorry, Wimpy. Bit of wimpy salt. Now, I've been painting for a good sort of 10-15 minutes here, and nobody's asked me probably one of the most asked questions that I get asked when I visit art groups. And I normally visit about 15 to 20 art groups a year, in between doing everything else, writing books and various things. And do you know what the most asked question I get is? It's this one. Where's your light coming from? How many times have you said that in your mind? Where's your light coming from? The other one we get asked a lot is this one. Did you wet it first? But I love that one. Where's your light coming from? I'm sure some of you at your group have said that, and I've got to say, by the way, congratulations, 100 years, eh? It's pretty impressive. 100 years of painting. Have you got any original members? Where's your light coming from? That just wants a couple of minutes to dry, folks. We'll leave that just to kind of soak in. And while that's drying, let's get back down to the palette. Where's your light from? Okay, so those colours can be got rid of. So I'm just gonna have a bit of a clean up here. It makes me laugh when I go in the normal world, sort of pre-COVID world. I spent the year travelling the UK and Europe, teaching, you know, workshops. Sometimes up to 100 people, big screens, big projectors, big audio system. Works beautiful. Really quite a big fan of doing that. And then of course it all came to a halt, obviously, about a year ago, give or take, not quite. And so I teach workshops down at Guildford, at Nottinghamshire, and Exeter, down Exeter. Where else do we do them? Coventry. And these workshops have anything between 30 and 50 people. I've always enjoyed big groups. The banter is really good, you know, teaching large groups of people. It's probably my favourite thing to do, if I'm completely honest. And listening to people, you know, this is making watching paint dry more entertaining. Just trying to talk to you, because it is literally like watching paint dry. Listening to people at workshops. The first hour, half an hour of a picture, you know as well as I do that the painting looks a bloody mess, if we're honest. You know, it's not until you finish that it actually looks like something that is half decent. So listening to what people say, beginners, people that are new to painting, obviously, are the best for this one. And over the years, over the 15 years of teaching workshops, I've compiled a list, what I call my top 4 things people say at painting workshops. And I'm going to tell you them. While I mix some colours. Let's just take a little look actually at the picture. We've got that beautiful salt happening. Okay, so a question's come through from Shirley. Hello to Shirley. Shirley Smith. Can you explain what the salt was for? Yes, it's really good salt on your chips, it just sorry. Salt is a great way of absorbing moisture. So if you look here, can you see we're getting a bit of falling snow, Shirley? Now, are crystals better? Right, so my experience is that the small spots of salt, normal kitchen table salt, is way better than rock salt for watercolours. It just works. Sea salt's the same, it's too big, it leaves a big mark, it leaves a bit of a mark on your paper. It does. So it's not something I would necessarily recommend, okay? Just normal McDonald's salt. Next time you go. Thank you, Shirley. Shirley Smith, hello to you. Okay, so yeah, colours. Now, I've got a brush here which is my kind of second go-to brush. It's a size 10 brush and I use this one quite a lot. And I want to bring in some other colours at this point while that's having a bit of time to dry. Salt happens slowly, it's best to leave to dry naturally. A great example actually of salt, just to quickly show you, would be this one here actually. Can we see this squirrel here? Look at that beautiful squirrel nutkin. This here is dioxine violet mixed with Prussian blue. Beautiful, beautiful. It's just right, isn't it? It's just enough. It looks like falling snow. Okay, really nice thing to use. Okay, so I'm just going to prep a few colours. So, rich colours on the penguins at this point. So a nice heavy strong yellow. That's quite sludgy, that yellow. Look at that. It's more green. Call yourself, who is this fella? Is he a professional? Let's just get rid of all these bits of splodge. Let's have a clean up. Let's have a clean up. Size 10 brush. No water, just a damp brush. Richness is what I'm interested in. Rich yellow. This one's very similar to Aureolin or Aurelian, however you pronounce it, but it's my own personal yellow. I want to use that. Quite strong, quite strong. Then I want some orange. This is natural orange. It's burnt sienna mixed with that yellow. If you've not got this palette of colour, I want to use some of that as well. And then I'm into the grey. I'm into the grey now. We talk about grey all the time. Every single workshop demo I use, I talk about grey painting. It's got to be the right grey. It's got to be the right grey. For me, it's the staple colour. It's the key colour. My grey is called natural grey. It's a very strong grey. There it is. It's not Payne's grey. It's not lamp black or anything like that. It's mixed. It's about 70% blue. Let's say cobalt. Bit of alizarin crimson and a bit of yellow ochre, and you've got that. But it's the most popular colour that the SAA sells. It's their biggest selling watercolour, natural grey. Thousands and thousands of tubes every year. So it's well established. It's been around for about 12 years. So I want to use some of that. But you know you can mix grey. You could even use burnt sienna and blue. It would give you something that would work. Not quite as good as this one for shadows, but we're not painting shadows as such. Beautiful. Okay, nice clean brush. And I bring the board back up because it's dry enough. The salts work to treat, and the salts work well because I've introduced Prussian blue into the equation, and that was really the secret, if I'm being honest. Prussian blue. If I'd used ultramarine blue, it wouldn't work. It's just not the right colour for the job, to be honest. There we go. Can't go wrong, can you, really? Lovely. Let's come back on that. We can see the salt. You can see the detail there. Look on it. It's worked really nice. We'll just bring it out of touch for you. I shall give that a bit of a dry as well. And let's build up some colours. Let's build up some colours at this point. So I'll leave the camera there because I want to work pretty close. I'll get my drying wand. Give it a bit of a blast. So back to what I was saying, the top 4 things people say at in-person workshops, and this is a 15-year list I've compiled, listening to people. In the first half an hour when you get to this stage, which is the depression stage, yeah, because it looks a pig's ear. We know that, So number 4 is, I'll not be framing this one. Number 3, I'll do it again when I get home. Number 2, I'll treat this one as a practice picture. But my favourite one was a lady at Guildford. She came to this workshop at Guildford years ago and she said, oh, well, it's a day out. Can't say that anymore, can we? Because it ain't a day out. Nice and dry, folks. As it dries, I'll brush the salt off, save it for another day. Is it joking? Save it for another day. Beautiful on the salt there. It worked a treat today. I'm chuffed. It doesn't always work. I'll be honest, it doesn't always work. We'll get the masking fluid off with a masking fluid removal tool. There it is. In fact, actually, I've got a masking fluid removal tool. It's called the Mask Away, and I'm not joking. Yes, believe it or not, you can buy this piece of rubber from the SAA. And it is a great little thing, and it basically takes masking fluid off without it causing chaos. This is where people come unstuck. We'll get the masking fluid off. It sticks to it. You see, it sticks to it, so it doesn't go all over the floor, which is not a bad thing actually. But we'll throw it on the floor anyway, because it's an art studio. You have to. I'm quite lucky because, as well as doing the art teaching, so I've got my art studio here at my home in Derbyshire. I also run a mail order art supply company called Watercolour TV, so we sell products based from home, so that was all great. We've got a bit of a mini warehouse where we sell paper, paints and all that business, so it's worked really well. There we go, so the fluid's come off. Let's start to build up some colours. Very pale, very soft at this point, and then we're going to work in some vivid, rich colours elsewhere in the picture. Great. Okay, stick with us, folks. Anticipation is half the fun after all. What I'm going to do here is get some nice rich yellows from the palette. We've got them in the palette ready. That's the yellow that we had. And then let's get the right picture on. There we go. And then we're going to work at the back of the heads of the 2 emperor penguins, of course. These. We're going to get nice and strong here. Don't be afraid of colour. Bring it over. A little bit on this corner. So paper's dry. Did you wet it? Paper's dry at this point. Yeah, but where's your light coming from? Clean your brush. A couple of taps on the tissue. I'm sorry if this is annoying you saying that, but it just makes me laugh. Now, if anybody's thinking I'm working from a reference photograph here, it's rare that you'll see me do that, because I don't know what it is. I've always had a good memory, and I've painted this picture elsewhere, so I've always had a bit of a photographic memory, I guess I could, if I wanted a better word, phrase even, you know. So I've always been lucky on that one. So I am very much working from the mind. It's a sketch I did a couple of years ago, and I've just kind of picked it back up again. I'm picking up some of the orange here from the palette. It's quite heavy, and I want to drop some of that in as well. So don't be afraid to bring a bit of orange into this. And I'm literally flicking it in. It's like a meteor coming in or something like that. A little bit across the base and into the mouth area as well. We can always add more colour if we need to, okay? So hello to Debbie. Hello to Debbie. Debbie has sent an email in, and she's painted one of my pictures that she's done on the back of a Watercolour TV membership, I believe. So, looking beautiful. And she's asked a question: if I'm working wet on £300 paper, does it dry faster than if it was £140 paper? Right, so it takes a lot more water the thicker the paper. And the reason I don't use very thick, rich papers is because, for me, it takes a lot of paint, it takes a lot of energy to actually get the paint on the paper. So I'm not a big fan of thick papers. For me, and for a lot of people, £140 is just right. There's ups and downs. I mean, I don't stretch paper. For me, life's too short for stretching watercolour paper, cutting the grass and doing the ironing, you know. So, but I'm painting, you know, 3 or 4 times a week, and when I'm writing books, which I'm doing at the minute, you know, even more. So to stretch that amount of paper is quite challenging. So a £300 paper will take more water. It'll probably dry about the same speed, if I'm honest. Probably about the same speed. But you will find that it just uses more water and more paint, especially if it's a cotton paper, because cotton absorbs the moisture. Always remember that one as well, Debbie. Okay, let's just bring this over here at the back of this penguin here. We're going to work down the chin and then again into the mouth of the penguin, and we'll work that in. Yellow is fugitive, which means we can really easily get water. Even after a good half an hour of letting that dry, you can just smooth it away, and there's no issues with doing that. It's just a great way to soften, smooth and blend your paint. It really is. It works nice on the yellows there. There's no issue with it. It's just really easy to smooth it. Again, grabbing some of the orange here, bring a little bit of that right into the corner. Perfect. And then we'll take that and we're just going to continue to smooth it away until it completely fades off. I'm just using water here, literally. Even come back to that side as well, and of course there's wax to contend with as well, but a nice wash, working the colours together, anticipation and all that business. Work it in. There we go. It's fine. It's okay. Clean brush. Now again, I want to give that a bit of a blast with the dryer, folks. Let's come back to the whole picture here. That's how it's looking at the minute. It still looks like the Joker from Batman, but it'll get there. You just got to bear with it. Just got to bear with it. Sound like a sat-nav there. Bare left. It's amazing because we bought a sat-nav a few years ago and went down to Longleat Safari Park. Check this out for a good sat-nav. In 100 yards, bare left, and guess what we saw on his left? That's quality. That's a quality sat-nav. Better than Google Maps. If someone walks in the room and sees this being waved around, they think, hang on, I thought you said you were going in your study to watch somebody paint. Keep it clean. Keep it clean. Filth. Filth, that's what this is. There we go. So any cotton paper will hold its moisture, to be fair, longer than a wood-based paper. It will. Beautiful. Okay, let's crack on then, folks. We'll take a 10-minute break here at 8:30, because that's when the pub opens. Well, they're all shut, aren't they? Let's bring a few shadows into this thing then, first of all. So, quick glance down at the palette, and we've got the grey here. Not too thick at this point. Again, it's mixed from blue, red, yellow, so we know it's a good neutral colour. Bit of a tap on tissue is always good for this. And then back to the picture here, what I want to do is get in some shadows. We'll start to bring this thing into focus at this point, folks. So working underneath the neck. And these things must have amazing flexible necks. I mean, look at that angle there. It's great, isn't it? Bring it down. Coming down here, of course. There's a tiny bit of wax there, but not much at that point. This is more shadow size 10 brush I'm using here, folks. A nice wide brush. I want to blend that away. Blending's a problem. Beginners have issues with blending. My advice to you, if you struggle with blending, is clean your brush, 2 taps on tissue, and then get a puddle of water here, and then move the grey into the puddle of water. That's what we're talking about, folks. But again, talking about workshops and things people do, it's been proven that tapping your brush on a piece of watercolour paper or a piece of kitchen paper twice is harder to do and to stop after 2 taps. It's harder to give up smoking, because most people's version of 2 taps on kitchen paper. You need water on your brush. My favourite one is in the water. Grab it and go. You need water. You need water on this. It's got to blend, and blending's a huge part of my painting. I need the shadows. I want to be seeing them. 50 Shades of Grey, that's what we should call this next bit. Let's come down here. I thought about writing a book about shadows called 50 Shades of Grey. No one's done that before. I thought it might be quite good. I thought it might be novel. Let's bring it over. You're paying for this, aren't you? Bring it down. Committee's going to pay me up in a minute, aren't they? Bring it down. Couple of taps. Again, let's build up these shadows just using water. Dry paper. Yeah, but did you wet it first? Bring it in. Yeah, but where's your light coming from? Sorry, I can't help myself doing that. It's like there's a voice in my head. It's quite disturbing, if I'm honest. I'm worried for myself. It's just lockdown, that's what it is. Smooth it out. A good bit of smooth blending. Like a cheap whiskey. A good cheap whiskey. Perfect. Then we'll do some on this side as well. So I'm going to turn the board on the side in a second. It'll grow on you. There's nothing better to do apart from watch The Chase. Does that finish The Chase? I don't know. What time's The Chase on? Let's do this side as well. I'll turn the board on the side for this particular stage, folks. Get the camera back into view so we can get a bit closer in here so we can see what we're doing. Let's come down here as well. I'm going a little bit darker under the neck, so I'm using that grey quite heavy to start with. And then come right down the edge. Now as I come down to the chick there, we're going to bring that down. And we're going to go in all the way. Down there. Good clean brush, couple of taps, get loads of water here. Look, and really get that fading. Really get it fading. Can't go wrong really. Chucking a bit of paint around on an evening. There we go. Beautiful. You can smell the excitement. I've got goosebumps, look. See? So a good bit of blending. I'm just going to grab some slightly richer colours here actually. I'm just making the grey a bit heavier at this point, that's all. Exactly the same, because where it meets this chick at the bottom and underneath those that neck shadow, we've all got some of them after lockdown, haven't we? Some neck shadows. Bring that in. Make it a little bit heavier. Smooth it out. Make it as smooth as ketchup from a bottle. There you go. Let's turn that back the right way, folks, and then we're going to start to go darker. At the minute we've got very simple, straightforward shadows in. It will get there. You just got to bear with it. Just got to bear with it. All right. Fab. So I'm just making sure that everything is nicely blended here. So I'm just using water at this point. I'm quite happy with the way that's gone so far. We're going to start to work in the stronger colours at this point, the real strong colours. I'm just going to bring in a shadow on one side of the youngster. Again, literally it's grey, you know, there's nothing more than that, it's just grey. I'm going to darken this edge down here carefully. My little boy's 4 and he loves Thomas the Tank Engine. Every time I say carefully, I think of the Fat Controller. Can we still call him the Fat Controller? Slowly and carefully, Thomas. You be careful, Thomas. You've been really useful. I'm sorry. I spent a lot of time at home, which has been actually quite nice. Because in this job that us artists do, we do normally spend a lot of time on the road, and I've been very lucky to have a full-time career. How did you get away with that then? A full-time career at teaching painting, because I've been, you know, I've been working with the guys at the SAA and had TV shows and all sorts of things over the years, you know, and wrote books. I've actually wrote 6 books, art books, believe it or not. And there's one book which is called Watercolour for the Absolute Beginner, and it's actually Search Presses, and this is, I've got a certificate to prove it, Search Presses #1 selling watercolour book. I mean, I really am, and it's in the top 20 art and craft books of all time. It's a huge thing. Search Press, that is top 20 art and craft books of all time. It's called Watercolour for the Absolute Beginner, and it's still, it came out in 2013, and it still is a #1 bestseller on places like Amazon and places like that. So really chuffed. I've wrote loads of books, absolutely tons of books, and I've just put the, while that's drying off, folks, crafty plug coming in. Here we go. It's like being at a proper art group, you see, trying to sell you something. Here we've got the new book that I've literally just put the finishing touches to. This is the first copy available, ready to paint in 30 minutes, animals in watercolour. It fits in nice for this, and it's rammed with step-by-step. Look at that beautiful King Charles there. Step-by-step tutorials. There's some more penguins for you there, look. 32. There's even a self-portrait of me in there somewhere. I've just spotted it. See if you can find it. There it is. See? All step by step, folks. And right at the beginning you get these wonderful tracings as well. So if you do want to get all of this book, it's available. It's out at the end of March. It's a big chunky book, Animals in Watercolour by Mr. Palmer. Huh? Can't go wrong. Beautiful. Okay, let's start to make these colours stronger. Let's go richer. Let's go darker without destroying the easel. But so far, it's getting there. You can see what I'm saying, can't you? When people go to these art like his workshop days, never painted before. I'll not be framing this one. I'll do it again when I get home. Well, at least it's a day out. Gotta persevere. Gotta persevere. It looks a mess, don't it? Yeah. Every time. Every time. I put it on top speed this time. Top speed. I can see the wax. I've written my name in it. The secret message. Can't go wrong. Can't go wrong. That kicks some heat out, that, you know. Kicks some heat out. It does. So let's go darker, let's go stronger, let's build this thing up. For the next 5 minutes, then we'll have a brew. We'll have a brew next. Let's get closer and let's start to work on the heads of these things here. These beautiful penguins, not things. Down at the minute. Size 10 brush would work fine. Back to the palette here. Okay, we're going to be using the grey again. We've got it here. You can see, if you look close at that, if we get close into that grey, this is fascinating. Electron grey paint. It's like watching a John Major speech. You can see how... I apologise if you're a John Major fan, by the way. You can see how it's separated, like it would do if you was if you had mixed it yourself. Natural grey, okay? The SAA sell it, or as most people call them, the SAS. Buy it from that SAS. Right, so a good strong bit of grey here, like rich grey. We're getting dark now, folks. Ooh. And then we've got the dark skin tone here as well. Let's clean some of this out here. Love the dark skin, beautiful colour. That's light skin, dark skin. I'm not using light skin on this one, but light skin's beautiful. It was used in the squirrel. It's like a red kind of colour, or a red. Now I'm happy to use this size 10 brush for this, but I want to rotate the brush over the side of the paper because I want it to be pointy. You can see that's quite a pointy brush. Look at that. It's like the sting off a wasp. Beautiful. Let's get dark. Let's go darker now. Come on, we can do this. Team effort. Paper's dry. Don't be afraid of the dark, as they say. You can always lighten watercolour. The thicker the paint, I think there's another good point about paper. It was Debbie that mentioned the paper. If the paper's thinner, it's easier to get the paint off if you need to. And lift out, as you'll see later, is a technique I do like to use. I'm a fan. I like to take a bit of colour out. Richness, strong colour here. I shall bring in some of the skin tones as well to this. Working around the eye at this point. We'll keep an eye on that. We'll bring it in. And I really am using this like a pen, Now, a point will come where I'm going to have to change brushes because it's just too clumsy using this thick brush. But I'm okay for the minute. Okay, we'll start to work all this in. It depends how precise your brush actually is on the tip, of course. Just enjoy that bit of peace and quiet. Thing I'm missing about not visiting art groups is that one person that nods off. There's always one person nods off, and then when you get to the end or you get to that stage where people clap, they go, and then this way comes start clapping. It's like an instant reaction to start clapping. It's probably the same person that says, "Where's your light coming from?" Okay, I want to stop and rotate the board here because I need to get in with this brush. This paint is lovely and strong. Just a bit of water, of course, with it being watercolour. You can't use neat paint, as you know, but nice and heavy is not a problem for this. Over the past sort of 3 or 4 years, we do get more and more requests for animal demos and less for landscape, which is fine because I love animal scenes. Changing brushes at this point and bringing in some of the skin tone, which again is heavy. There it is. Slightly opaque colour, that. Not 100%, but it's got a bit of meat to it, is that colour. I want to work that in actually. I want to work it in and mix it. Clean up all these areas. You get that nice. Let's get close and let's make use of this technology. Let's get close in. You can even see the divots on the paper. This is something what you don't normally get, is it, eh? So I'm basically just refining it, making sure everything's blending in, everything's smooth. So I'm working quite, you know, heavy, almost in a gouache strength really, but that little bit of skin tone just complements that darkness. You get that slight little hint of colour coming in there. We'll pop the eyes in a wee bit later, we'll get to them. What I do want to do though is just come to this top edge, clean the brush, give it a couple of taps on tissue there. That was about 5. And then I'm just going to take the brush and smooth this along the top, graduate it off, and then just tickle the edge, ever so gently feather the edge on the penguin there, so it's not quite as crisp as you started off with. Does that make sense? So just basically smoothing it out for you. Beautiful way of creating a bit of crispness, and we shall go darker with that a little bit later. Yes, Alison's a good friend of mine. There's six artists, a consortium of artists: Alison Board, Sharon Hurst, myself, Jeremy Ford, Denise, Alan, and Alison Hargreaves. We're all part of something called Artist Demo Days. If you've not come across them, head over to Facebook and search Artist Demo Days. You need to get in on there, folks. Okay, more of the same. Blocking in 50 Shades of Grey and working this thing through. Again, I'll alternate the colours. I'll bring some of that skin tone in as well. Dark skin, like I say, there's a light skin as well. Very popular colours. Working around. Avoiding the eye, of course. Pick that up later. This penguin's got a little bit of a smile. But if you was an emperor penguin, would you be smiling? Probably. If you get reincarnated, it's not being bad reincarnated as an emperor penguin, is it? Unless you don't like the cold, of course. You know, I have thought about this, but the worst animal to get reincarnated as is a chicken, because your life expectancy is poor. I mean, seriously, come on. Unless you're a cockerel, then you've probably cracked it, but a chicken, you don't want to come back as one of them. The sloth, that'd be a good one. Come back as a sloth. Or a spider, because there's a few people that I've got a list of people I want to creep out when I come back as a spider. Thought about it. We had lots of time on our hands, haven't we, during lockdown, so. Again, working down. Rotating the board to get these nice angles in. Can't go wrong, really. And again, I'm just going to change brushes here and go for that skin tone again. Make sure we get nice and crisp, nice and solid. That's what it's all about. A good 6 brush. It's kind of my workhorse. Someone said to me at a workshop, Matthew, I can't find my number 6 brush. I've got a 9, I've got a size 9 brush. Smooth all this in. Like I say, watercolour is dead easy to rework, especially if it's heavy like this. Turn it back the right way. Looking a bit more like penguins at that point, hopefully. How was your brew? Did you have a biscuit as well? A hobnob? Or a rich tea? Did your biscuit fall in your tea? You know that feeling when your biscuit falls in your tea? That like you can hear your heart, can't you? It's the same feeling you get when a beginner goes back into the picture. They've painted a fairly okay sky, but you think, you know what, I want to put a bit more paint in my sky. Just as it's about to dry, you pick your brush up and you touch it, and this massive cauliflower appears, and everything around you goes into slow motion. We've all been there. And it's the same sensation when your biscuit falls in your tea. Like, no! Exactly the same. Great, clean brush, couple of taps, couple of dozen taps. Extend this back edge. Feather it, no pun intended, to get a little bit of softness. We shall bring some dark into this later. Can you go any darker than that? Yes, we can. We can do that. We can go darker. We'll get the darker later. We're also going to work here along the back edge. There's a bit of wax here. This is the first time we're seeing wax. I'm excited. It's a sad life. Bring it in. Bring it in. Bring it in. That noise. Hear that noise? That's my shoes creaking. Just in case you're wondering. Because I have to stand on my tiptoes to get to this bit. I've not paid for my shoes yet, you see, the creaking. Look at that wax repelling it. Now, it's interesting because the first coat of paint, it kind of goes in between the wax, but then you can always get a bit more on it. Always get a bit more wax on it if you need it. At a later stage, bring that down. A bit of water. Blend it in. But yeah, that wax has gone on nice. Because of the divots in the paper, it's a not surface paper, of course, which means it's got just a very minimal texture to it. Fade that out because I'm going for a vinaigrette, remember. But you can see how that's starting to look more like a penguin at that point, hopefully. Can't go wrong really with this. Let's carry on. Let's carry on regardless. Over this side, we've got a similar marking here on this one. A little bit of wax here, not quite so much there, but the wax really will come into play soon. Bringing it round. We got the water here again. Smoothing it all in. If anybody's a member of the SAA, if you log on to your online account and have a look on the video on demand they've got, the painting of the woodpecker, I did that last week as a live demo, so you can watch that back if you like. If you like your animals, you like painting your animals, then please do check it out. Okay, I'm just getting some more colour because I want to go for these big washes now, folks. I'm going to zoom out to the full picture. There it is. You see the whole thing. I want to get these big washes of dark in there now. There we go. Okay, lovely. Right, so pretty much the same, natural grey. Get the palette back on for you. You can see the grey here. See, it's very cold grey. I shall be bringing in some of this colour a little bit later. This one is a brown. It's called Natural Brown. It's made from the same primary colours as the grey. But if you've not got this, if you've got something like Burnt Umber or Burnt Sienna, or as I call it, Bont Sienna and Bont Umber, if you've got some of that Bont Umber, like Bont Toast, you see. Bont. Right, sorry. Just keeping myself entertained, you see. It's quite lonely in this studio. Let's bring it in. Can't go wrong with this. Going to bring it down. Wax time. Look at that. Beautiful, repels. Let me show you that close because I'm excited for you. Let's see it close. There he is. It's repelling. It's repelling. It's repelling the colour. Size 10 brush. Or a 01 if you've not got a 10. Bring it in. That's gorgeous how it just leaves that little bit of a... We've got light reflecting on there, but can you see the sort of wax effect? Works nice, that. I'm going to bring this around here. You can't get the wax off. I mean, people ask me if I put too much on. What I normally say is turn it over and start again. Now, in that situation, what you do is you put another coat of colour on, because what actually happens is it does actually hide some of it. You can actually iron some of it off if you put some sort of greaseproof paper on the top of it and iron it. It will take it off, but that's extreme. That's pretty extreme stuff, if we're being honest. Not necessarily needed. Got a good bit of dark there. Good bit of darkness coming in. Let's get back to the whole picture so we can see the penguins. There they are. And then we'll blend all this in. So we're going to take a bit of water. I want to drop in some of the skin tone actually while I'm there. Just going to bring some of that into it because I love that colour. Little bits just working in. Back up so you get that bit of warmth coming in. It's very subtle with a silent B, which is same as swimming with a silent P. Bring it in. It's filth, this, pure filth. Northern filth. That's what you start watching. Smooth blending. Water tissue. Soften these lines in. Fab. I'm going to get some dark down the back here. Same principle. Dark grey. In fact, I want to go there first because I can't get to that easily without causing too much chaos. And there's enough chaos in the world at the minute, so we'll ease that in around that corner. Beautiful. And then what we'll do is we'll go for the darkness again. Let's go under the wing. I assume it's a wing on a penguin. Is that... I've got a good joke for you, really. There's this chap doing a crossword. We're talking Daily Star crossword here, we're not talking Telegraph. And he's got stuck on a question. Flightless bird from Iceland. 2 words. Flightless bird from Iceland. So he gets his wife, come on, what's this? Flightless bird from Iceland. She says, I know what it is. Frozen chicken. Yeah, that'll do. Love that darkness under there. It's weird because I'm waiting for a laugh. Mind you, to be fair, I'm used to not getting any laughs anyway. Look, we've lost 3 viewers and got 4 thumbs down at that point. Not watching this. It gets worse. Richness in colour. Bring it over. Bit of water on the brush. Smooth it all in, smooth it all in. Watercolour can be really easily reactivated. Lovely way of working. Let's get that light so it's not reflecting. Look at that. We're looking more like penguins. What's the other one? Why don't polar bears eat penguins? Because they can't get the wrappers off. I don't know. They're in different. There's one North Pole and one South Pole, I reckon. Saying that though, we've got some polar bears in Doncaster, Yorkshire Wildlife Park. Beautiful. You know what's interesting is that when they first came, the polar bears, they were beautiful white as this. But over the years that they've been in Doncaster, because there's not so much snow in Doncaster, they've evolved to the surroundings and they've gone more of a tan colour, which is quite interesting. So I'm just getting all this smooth together. Shadows are going to come a little bit later, folks, on this one, okay? We get in there. I'm just going to make sure everything blends in. It's nice to play with a bit of colour here. Just let that fade away. Okay, I'm going to turn this slightly on the side at this point because I want to work across the top of the neck there. Make sure my hands are clean. Just going to come in about here and then bring it down on a curve. Bring it over the corner and then take it in so it starts to become part of all of this. It just sort of melts in. Again, we've got wax there, which is nice. Bit of water, a couple of taps on tissue. This is good tissue, this, from Pound Shop. The Pound Shop's still open at the minute. You know when people were panicking and stockpiling toilet roll? I weren't, I was stockpiling kitchen paper because the amount I use. I got excited then and dropped my board. Bring it over. I still remember the first time I took my mum into a Pound Shop. I think it was at Meadowall, which is a shopping centre in Sheffield. She walked in and walked out. I said, "What's wrong?" She said, "I'm not going in there. There's no prices on anything." I said, "What do you mean?" She said, "Well, she's got this thing where she says that if there's no price on something, it must be expensive." Is that like an old-fashioned way of looking at it? I think they're closing the name Pound Shop. Now, like I say, folks, I shall be going darker with this a little bit later, but there's just so much blending involved in this, and it's nice because I can look at this even here. If there's bits I'm not happy with, I can go back and blend them in, but we're getting that nice shape to it, which is really cool. Liking that. Just going to pop a little bit more dark down here, just for a bit of balance and a bit of texture. We've got gorgeous texture with the wax, and I want to show you that now. I know light's bouncing off. If I do that, we can rest it against the paper so the light, because there's 4 spotlights in the studio and the light does reflect. So if you have a close-up look at this, you can see the texture in the paper there. That works quite nice, yeah? We'll bring in some darkness a little later, but that's how we're shaping up so far. The zombie penguins got no eyes. We'll get to them. We'll get to them. Another common question get asked: how do you know when it's time to stop? How do you know when you've finished? When is the time to stop? How do you know that you've done enough? Well, when you teach watercolours for a living, it's when you get to 9:30. That's when you know you've finished. That's probably the best answer I can give. Let's look at Chick. Pingu. Pengu. Pingu. Is it Pingu or Pengu? The little penguin. I remember watching that. Remember it well. Right. Back to grey. Looking forward to getting some real darks in, but let's have a look at Chick. A little bit different here, folks, using the same dark colour, but we're going to actually work more wet into wet. Yes, I want to wet it first. And I'm going to use a size 10 brush to wet it with. So I want to wet it around here, which would be quite nice. And also down, because it's almost like a down feather on a penguin. I keep saying chick out. I'm hoping that's the right thing to call it. Just, I'm thinking of birds and, you know, chick. Sorry if it's wrong. Put it in writing if it's wrong. Send me an email. mattartistme.com. There's the water. Wetting it. This is where a good paper shines, you know, because, literally, because you want it to have layers upon layers of water. And all I want to do here is grab a 6 brush or a 9, but turn it the other way around and go in and spot in. I want it to spread. I'm spotting. I want it to bleed. That there is what you call bleeding paint, which is quite a useful saying that has various meanings, does bleeding paint. But it comes, especially with watercolours, bleeding paint. Depends how you say it. If you say that is bleeding paint or bleeding paint, then, you know, kind of different meanings. And then what we're going to do is just drop in a few little random bits of this. You get that almost like little spots on here, so letting the paint spread, wet into wet. Yeah, but where's your light coming from? Bring it in. I've spent a big chunk of my life teaching painting holidays and still do. Starting in 2001, I used to take, I say used to, last year, the first year I missed, take large groups up to the Lake District, the Peak District, Norfolk and Northumberland, teaching painting holidays. And of course last year was all a washout, as we know, and this year is, you know, it's a bit, we're not sure this year what's happening, because who knows what's going to happen over the next few months. But going outside painting, so normally I spend about 8 weeks a year teaching outside, teaching holidays, which is wonderful, as you can imagine. And it's a privilege, if I'm honest, to do it. It really is. And places like Keswick in Cumbria, stunning, like Windermere and all that area, Derwentwater, Bassenthwaite. Actually spending all that time, 20 years of studying light and where light does actually come from, especially on large areas like mountains and landscape, light does what it wants. It's like water and sand, you know. Light only matters when you're working on objects like small objects and buildings. It just doesn't matter, you know. I tend to tell people, do what's right for the picture, work to the strengths of the painting. So where you put your light and dark shades is all about. Like here's a prime example. I've darkened down the back of this parent penguin, but then this chick here, I need to see some light and dark working together. So I don't care where light's coming from. What I care about is keeping some light on that back edge, and we'll get that in a second with a bit of water. Clean the brush a couple of taps, and then we're just going to soften it in. Yeah, but where's your light coming from? Bring it in, bring it down. I'm going to chuck some skin tone in because I like that colour. It mixes in nice with it. It does. Just little random bits here and there. It's very cold. It's a cold grey, which is why it works so well for shadows. And then just lightly tickle that edge. It's still a little bit damp there, to be fair, so we can get away with that. I want to be a bit darker just here. Looking forward to getting the final bits of detail in, folks. Stick with us. There's nothing better to watch apart from the news. And that's not very good, is it? Just making sure that these lines are blending. Light's reflecting, so I keep tilting it forward. There we go. Okay, now actually while I'm at that sort of close-up detail, I'm going to change colours. We're going to change colours a little bit. We're going to use the grey again, but we're going to drop some brown in it. So it's a little bit crisper. A little bit crisper. Yeah, this is proper good stuff. Look at this. Blitz. See? Huh? Can't go wrong with that. Pin it on line. Use it again tomorrow. What am I painting tomorrow? I'm not sure actually. Well, I've got filming tomorrow for Watercolour TV. That's what we're doing tomorrow. Right. Okay. So let's go in here then, and let's add this section of beak just for the minute. So we're going to bring it in across the top edge. Like I said, we've gone much darker. Just look at the point on that brush. Really fine tip. We'll come back to that in a sec. The bottom section of beak goes in here. Outlining it is what we want to be doing. Clean my brush on the tissue and then just blending all that in. For the minute, we'll come back for the final detail in a couple of moments, but that's just going to give us a little bit of a good starting point there for the beak. That is a really dark colour. Introducing the brown into the mix really does just, it almost takes it into a black, but without it being black, because it is primary colours. It's two doses of primaries basically. Just throwing the brush on the floor, throwing the towel in, and I can use this to make sure things are getting quite dark. I'm also going to start, I'm going to get that eye in as well while I'm there. Picked up a stray hair there from somebody. That's the one that gets on your picture. Stray pubic hair on your picture. Okay. Now I'm happy to stick with this brush because it's quite fine actually. This is the grey and brown mix. Didn't they make wallpaper grey and brown? Super Fresco by Graham and Brown. Am I talking nonsense here, or am I thinking of something genuine? I seem to remember it. It was like, I think my mum had it and I used to pick it off when we were kids because it was like polystyrene. Polystyrene and wallpaper, like 3D. And I think we used to pick bits off as kids because we used to like winding up my mum. I bet you were little buggers, you pair, me and my brother. There we go. Okay, let's get the eye in. How do we do the eye? Well, this is where this camera comes in because you can get really close in. We're actually broadcasting at 4K. Is anybody watching this in 4K? 4K, which is, of course, really high definition. I think most people view them at normal resolute HD, but it leaves here at 4K, so you get that option. If you've got a really good internet connection, you can watch this back at 4K. You can see every divot in the paper there. I've left a highlight, of course. Clean the brush. Going to use a very pale skin tone, and just going to go in and drop the rest of the eye in. Now we'll leave that to dry. We'll come back to it. We'll give it a tilt so you can see. That's better. There we go. Look at the difference in colour, folks. It's dark and dark, yeah? That's what we're wanting. We'll come back to that in a second, but let's take a look at the beak. We're going to use that same colour. There's a bit of Derbyshire. We're gonna bring that in. I suppose as an art group, it's actually working out. Is it working out better for you doing live streaming because you can get artists that wouldn't normally be able to visit because, you know, distance and things like that. From the vibe I'm getting from art groups and from virtual teaching is that people are loving it. People are wanting more of this. So my advice to you is have a think about sticking with it. You know, if it works, treat it as the new normal, because people are really warming to this virtual way of working. I think if you've got the technology to view it back at your end, it's getting a nice... There's not many art groups that are doing it though. I bet there's no more than a dozen or so in the country, maybe a few more, but from what we can tell as artists, there's not a huge amount of art groups that are doing this kind of work. So well done to you guys for doing this, because it really is quite a nice thing to look at that beautiful detail. Let's come back here. I want to get down to the bottom section of these and I want to put a few little markers in to represent a bit of detail, not a huge amount. I want to bring a little bit of a line coming down here, just on that side there. Blend that in. And I hope this has opened your eyes a little bit as well, because I know everyone just thinks zoom, zoom, zoom all the time. That's Mazda's logo, isn't it? Zoom, zoom, zoom. But there's other, you know, like I say here, there's other ways to do it, which hopefully this is kind of proven, and I'm all geared up for doing this method. I've not actually got Zoom. I have worked with Zoom, but I've not got a Zoom subscription, just because it doesn't suit me, because I like to work with large groups, as I've said before. Let's bring some texture in, and of course large groups in Zoom don't necessarily, especially for actually teaching, I mean it's alright for demonstrating I suppose, but for teaching it doesn't really work. Let's do some dry brush here, because these are very, very fluffy, cuddly kind of style, aren't they, these guys? So making sure we've got some nice bit of texture, using a bit of dry brush of course, which we all know what dry brush is, don't we? Opposite to a wet one. Rough it up a bit. Same on here as well, on the main penguin as well. I'm going to bring in some extra. I want to get the eyes on these guys in a minute as well. So I'm bringing in some texture on here, literally making the brush go a little bit splayed on the edges. Get the focus on that hopefully. There you go. Creating a bit of extra texture. I do want to be a little bit darker. I'll turn this on the side, almost there with this, but we're getting towards those last little bits of detail. I want to go a bit darker down the side here of this penguin. I want to make sure that it really has got some dark, and there's a few areas I want to do this on if I'm honest. So let's get some extra shadows, extra blending. Size 6 brush will do me for this. Making use of the paper here, a little bit darker under there as well. And of course another good thing about doing virtual teaching like this is no one got to put all the tables away at the end, which is a Brucey bonus. I used to use a Fitbit when I used to do the workshops. Like one of the venues at Birmingham we used to have 100 people sometimes on some of the more popular workshops that we were doing, and used to clock up the amount of steps we used to do. Like worked out about 7-8 miles you'd walk during the day's painting workshop, and then put all the tables away and have to drive for a couple of hours, that kind of thing. So there's always there's pros and cons to everything I suppose. Just making sure that I'm just adding some extra darkness in and around here. And if we come back, we can see that we are getting there. It's looking penguin-like, but I'm just now spending time with this really strong colour. Stick with me because I'm getting towards the last sort of 10 minutes here, and using rich colours. This is brown, this is grey, the two colours together. This is really as dark as we're going to get, if I'm honest. Powerful, strong colours. Thanks Nathan, hello to Nathan, brackets Bill Bain, great demo. Nathan's on the chat. Nathan's on the chat. Glad you enjoyed it. At the start of the few months after the lockdown happened, we got a couple of art groups got in touch, and normally, you know, you get a few kind of repeat bookings at art groups each year, but there's been more repeat bookings coming in. Maybe there's less people doing live stuff, but there's one art group in Grantham that I go to, which is normally based in the old Methodist church there. Have me back every 6 weeks to do a demo, which is great. It's wonderful. Obviously different subjects each time. What I'm doing here, folks, is bringing in darker, darker, darker all the time. It's all about strength here. It's all about rich colours. Adding a few shadows. So how do you put dark on dark? Like I say, introduce something like a brown or even a bit of red would work nice. And I want to bring this in here. You can see, you can probably just about get that darkness there where it separates the two areas. Quite important for me to have that. That would also apply to underneath the wing as well, and on the edge of this wing. I'm literally, you can, if I tilt the board you'll see it better, literally painting dark on dark down here, shadow on shadow. I know a couple of people were concerned at the first that actually, you know, making sure that this thing is actually live. Well, it's always, everything I do is live, but the fact it's recording now as I'm talking to you. Every brush stroke is recording. So in about 30 minutes after this thing's done, use the same link that Ken sent you. Hello to Ken. And just basically watch it back, skip over the nonsense, watch it back, have a go. We'll come back to the sketch at the end just to compare, but I'm going to be bringing in some highlights very soon, folks. Of course, the eyes, we're getting towards that last little bit now, so really happy with this. But this darkness, I love this darkness. It's, you can see it looks rich, it looks strong. Compare this to the rest of it, and this shadow here. I'm going to chuck a bit of water on there, blend it in. The more texture the better. Look at that beautiful, it's done its job, that it has. I've also brought some little bits into the head as well. I want to bring some of that darkness into the beaks as well. That does mean I need to rotate the board, unfortunately, because it's a bit hard to see. Look at that, it looks good on the side. Bring it in and get those eyes in as well while I'm here. Just want to make sure I'm darker. It's always the darkness that makes these things work, always, every time. You know, in the thousands and thousands of paintings that I've done, it's the bit at the end which is the darkness that always, as I'm sure you know yourself, has the biggest impact on the picture. Let's bring that little bit of dark under that neck there as well. High contrast picture, but then it was always going to be, with it being penguins, of course. It's what it's all about, strength in colour. And it's time for the eyes. It's time for the eyes. We'll get those in. I want to show you something which is a little video. Okay, have a look, folks. Let me see if I can show you this. See if it works. It's a little video. I want to zoom in close on my phone. Hopefully you can see this. Have a look at this. This is the funniest 15 seconds. It's called the penguin slap. Let's put the sound on, shall we? There's no sound. That's probably a good thing, actually. So if you ever get a bit stressed in life, just watch that. Just do a quick search for the penguin slap. Let's get the eyes in. How do we do the eyes? We're going to be using, you can see the skin tones there. We're going to be using a mixture of grey and the skin for this. Happy with the number 6 brush. It's going to work fine for me. So it's like a warm grey. Nice pointy brush. There it is. Now, the eyes on the penguins are very fine, almost like slits on the adult penguins. And what we do is we paint it like a sort of C shape. Oop. Didn't mean to do that. Talk amongst yourselves. Smell the excitement, can't you? Let's bring it in. I'll start again. I'm very excited, that's what I was shaking. Bring it in. It's like a backwards C shape. Like a Pac-Man. That's all it needs. That's all it needs for the eyes. At that distance, doesn't want much at all. They're very, very fine. In fact, if you look on some photographs online, you'll probably not even see the eyes. They're very, very fine. They really are. And at that distance, I'm working around the edge a little bit. Like I say, I want to bring some highlights into this as well. Very fine, very, very fine on the eyes. And then we're going to grab a little bit of water, almost dry the brush, and we're going to soften the two sides into the rest of the body, into the head. So that little bit of a highlight's there. Just give it that little bit of soften, it just helps them to bed in. Onto the beaks, just a little bit of detail. Bit of water. Just that little bit of extra detail there, that's all I wanted. And make sure it's dark on the tips. Fabulous. Let's just come over to the wings here with that really strong brown and grey mix that we've been using, and bring in some little bits of markings, little flicks. Seeing them in concert. Was that little mix? Little flicks in one direction. Seeing them as well. Sad but true. Got dragged. I got dragged. Just going to tilt this a second because I want to go darker. On this back edge. Brush it in. Dry brush it in. It's all part of the texture. All part of the texture there. Just going to zoom out a little bit there for you. There we go. Okay, I'm just going to get some highlights in this thing now, folks, for a couple of minutes, just to sort of wrap it up, really. And highlights always work nice, of course. So for this, I want some clean, dry tissue. I found this piece hanging from a tree in the garden. An extra pair of Y-fronts. And a pair of shoes. And down at the pallet, Y-fronts. Can you still buy Y-fronts? We've got some a brush here called a lift out brush. Yes, you heard it. Matthew Palmer lift out brush. It's a lovely tool for creating highlights, and basically just a bit of water through the fingers there. I want to go in and drop in some highlights. There's the sketch, just in case you wanted to have a quick look at the sketch again. So that's how it all started, folks. Remember, you can go back to the start and pause that, okay? And you can get the sketch again. But there it is, there's that. Let's just give it a very swift dry, very quick dry, with the dryer. And let's just bring in some highlights to a few areas, not many, just for 30 seconds or so. First thing I want to do is I want to lighten where the beaks kind of shoot off. The mouth. Bit of a highlight there. A taper. Same for this one, of course. Comes off very easy. Like a little extension, and then just a few highlights, sort of muscular form if you like. There's a couple in the beak. There's a lot of paint on there, so sometimes you have to give it a second dose, but just a couple of little highlights for a bit of shape and form. Wipe it out, hopefully you can see those going in. I always think it's worth adding a few. Lift off. It's an essential part of my work, is lift off. I use it a lot in everything I do, painting. Just gives a bit of form to them, a bit of shape. Here's a good one, where that wing goes up. You can see the colour coming off on the brush there on the tip. That's why it's a light coloured brush, for that reason. Look how that brings that wing out there. It's always important to me to finish, you know. Do you ever get artists that don't finish demos? I mean, you kind of expect to finish, but sometimes there's a couple of minute overlap. You know what I always say, don't you? It's free. You don't charge overtime as artists. Look at them little highlights we're bringing in. Always worth hanging around for the highlights. The highlight of the demo. Down here, where this chick comes in. Let's lighten that little bit there, where it just makes it pop a little bit more. Beautiful. Beautiful. Bring it in. I'll not be framing this one. It's the enjoyment that you take out of painting, you know. If you don't like it when you've done it, you can always turn it over and start again. Do it again when you get home. The enjoyment. It's the enjoyment. It is. Every single time. Very briefly, folks, I've got some white goulash. Got some white paint. This particular one is my own brand of white. which is whiter than white. It's called natural white. Alright? And we'll use this just to get a little bit of light in those eyes on the top two penguins. They want a little bit, they just need to have a little bit of light in them, to be honest. Just a touch, a sliver. So I'm just using a bit of white here. I'm just mixing it into a point on the brush, because I just feel as though I just want to get that little teeny weeny little bit of white in there, just a sliver. Okay, you can see it's white on the brush. Now I know this is a bit hard to see, but it's about a quarter, no, it's about 1/8 of an inch. It's tiny little area, but that's what they are on penguins. I've dropped a bit of white on there, give them a bit of extra kick. And you can just pop a little bit of light, just slightly offset, and a little slither just on the beaks. Just a teeny little hint of white, folks. Down to Boris, that's his name. You can see it's Boris. His wigs fell off, but what we'll do... No, it's not that Boris, it's a different Boris. We like that Boris, or do we? Yeah, of course we do. We like this Boris. He's a lovely Boris. We're going to put some little bits of white on. There's always the little glint on the nostril there, so you can smell your fish. You've got to smell your fish. You've got to smell your fish. Got to. It's important. And then a few little bits of white just on the edge of the wing there. Just a few little curved lines on the edge with that white there. Just gives a bit of kick to it, I always think. Always a nice thing to see. And the bit where the neck, just, you can't see that, can you? But the bit where the neck just kind of folds up there, just a little bit of white, just a tiny little slither of white just down that edge. It just helps to separate it a touch, that's all. Of course you can always use water to blend the white in if you need to as well, but that's a nice way of adding a little bit of extra white if you feel that's what you want to do on your picture, of course. Lovely. Okay, couple of things then. First of all, the highlight of the demo is getting the penguins mounted. Yes, I did say that. We're going to mount the penguins because it's after the 9 o'clock watershed. We can do that. Can we mount penguins? Yeah. Bugger the expense. But there we go. There is a penguin, a family of penguins. Got a mount here. Pop it on. That should give it a nice, beautiful. And then I'm going to grab a waterproof pen and stick the old moniker. I always find if you sign your paintings Vincent van Gogh, they're worth millions. I'm just saying, it's up to you. Probably not advisable, but let's get close in. Let's start off with Chick Swagger. Beautiful levels of detail into these two guys. Those eyes, that little bit of white on those eyes, those fine little slits of eyes. Look at that, beautiful. Coming back, the mixtures of the browns, the skin tones, zooming back. the texture from the white. Look at the white on the wings.